Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Transformation Leaders Podcast. I'm joined today with Sean Ennis, my co-host and partner in crime. And today we're going to talk about the decisions that happen within the enterprise. Just forewarning, we're going to use a deck today just to kind of help you follow along. But Sean and I are going to go into more of a consultative mode and just kind of talk about our experiences and things that we've seen, experienced in the industry, and just try to have a more natural and organic conversation around all of this. We have covered this topic to some extent in lesser or greater detail, but these are the types of things in generative AI or at the heart of AI that change how AI works. And so, you know, these things are like drinking from the fire hose. Every other night there's a new model released. And so it's just absolutely insanity. So if you feel like we're beating a dead horse, we're not. You really need to understand what's going on here. And then plus the perspective that Sean and I will bring to the table will help hopefully enlighten you to some extent, or at least enrich your experience and understanding of maybe where you should go. And we're going to cover two sides of the house, both commercially available that you'll pay for, and then some open source options as well. And Sean actually just enlightened me about some experiences that he had and talked to me about a model that I had no clue existed until about 40 minutes ago. So quite interesting. So Sean, when you're ready, let's kind of, I don't know what just happened there. That's weird. Let's dig into kind of the first overlay. Just give a little context here. This is something that I had found online for McKinsey. And so I'll let you use this to set up whatever else we're going to get into.
Certainly. So people say all the time, hey, Sean, we're a Microsoft shop. We're a Salesforce shop. We're a Google shop. And that's fun. People are like, well, you know, we're going to use Gen AI here. We're going to use Gen AI there. And what people are forgetting is that there are uses for the different models. In fact, if you go to Hugging Face, there's thousands of models. So one of the things that I keep telling people is don't think that they're completely interchangeable. It's funny because it started where it was, okay, here's OpenAI and here's their model, and that you have to prompt it a certain particular way. And then Anthropic came out with Claude, and you need to prompt it a different way, and that the prompts do not apply across both. And then now we're getting into the complete opposite conversation I have with people, saying that every model is completely interchangeable. Yep. And I would not say completely.
Yeah, there are nuances.
There are extreme nuances. You know, so I like to talk about things from closed model and open model perspective. You know, first and foremost, let's just start with the king leader, which is OpenAI, right? They just released GPT-5. Too much negative fanfare. They had about 5 or 6 different models, the O series, the 4.5, the 4, that they had. That people were using, and they announced 5 and saying we're deprecating everything. Here's the situation with closed models that you get as a cloud service. If they stay, they don't want to use it anymore, you will have to migrate to the new. Now, that means all your testing, all your training, everything to do with what you're using needs to be retested. So a lot of people are like, hey, the closed source as a service models are the best models. Yes, I agree. From a quality perspective, they're head and shoulders over the open source models, in my opinion. However, and here's the however, you are tying your product or service to somebody else's absolute whims. This week, I had a client very upset because their service was being interrupted. And after troubleshooting, the team found that it was an open AI API that was crashing. Again, if OpenAI, their APIs don't work, you'll have to open a ticket and get them to fix it for you. And if you're completely and solely dependent upon them to provide those APIs, that means you're down or interrupted or degraded until you can get them to change their mind.
Yep.
And this is the same thing with their models. Every model has its own nuance. David, I'd love to hear your experience here, but I would say at least 90 to 95% of the models, parameter by parameter, 8 billion parameter to 8 billion parameter comparison, it's pretty similar.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the things that I've experienced, and we've talked about this at great length, and it's the same thing that we keep saying pretty much again and again. This is today's technological, number one thing to talk about. Everything's AI, everything's going AI, blah, 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 blah. As everything changes, everything also stays the same. So if you look at it in its most simplistic terms, the common sense rules still apply. Fault tolerance, having a plan B, and making sure that you have consistency and continuity. And everything that Sean just said is also the same things that I'm also seeing on my side. And I don't know why, but enterprises, they know this. They've solved this problem. And very few of the enterprise clients that I am working with or talking about within the process, very few of them have an alternate model. And the secret to the sauce of success in all of this isn't just having a plan B, because I'll give an example. You have OpenAI, you're using that. Maybe your plan B is Llama, a private model, or Claude, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just insert your whatever here. And while that's great because it will answer, the problem is you don't necessarily have a baseline of expectations of how that prompt is going to perform on your backup, which leads into what Sean was talking about earlier. Hey, if I replace I'm forced to upgrade from 4 point whatever in OpenAI to version 5, or I want to go to whatever, what does that mean? What does that mean for your output? And so the quality of service, I don't care if you're making money and it's a public product that you're SaaSing or charging a subscription to or a fixed fee or whatever, or it's internal inside the walls. You're using it. You're an insurance company. You're using it to process claims. You're using it to whatever. The ramifications and implications across the board. It's one thing to just give a funny answer in the context of generative AI, but a lot of times, a lot of the power of AI that enterprises are really coming up to, and I think this is the key core crux and takeaway that a lot of people don't talk about. Executives love to talk about chatbots, and they think of AI in terms of chatting or ChatGPT, because that's how it all started. But the real power is 70% or greater, in my opinion, is the automation component of making decisions, decision tree and matrix decisions. And if it goes off the rails, this isn't just as simple as hallucination of giving a wonky or an embarrassing or potentially legally incriminating type of output. It is giving you, it's making a core business decision. That's critical. And so this is the risk. And I think this is probably a lot of the points that we're going to make today is going to be framed around probably at least a lot of those points, because this is where I'm seeing a lot of breakdown as we move forward in trying to get more people onboarded, as well as into new programs and convert the current way into the future state of where they want to be.
And again, the same time that they released, OpenAI released GPT-5, they released GPT-OSS. So they're first open source, right? Now, everything you see here, it's a bit of a misnomer, right? If you're going to be playing with a model, you're going to need to play with a model that is something that your hardware can handle. And none of these, as they're showed here, are going to be possible. You can't run 671 billion parameters on your desktop PC. In fact, I
Or
tried
make orders.
running the OpenAI GPT-OSS, and it was so slow, it wasn't worth using.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is certainly interesting, and OpenAI is head and shoulders from a monthly average user. They're beating everybody. So I would certainly start there. Now, the next one that I like talking about is Claude. Anthropic is the who are they of the group. And they are absolutely high quality. They're the ones that I go to first. I think they provide me the best value of my time. However, they are not free, or the way that they handle out their tokens are very limited. ChatGPT seems to be much more liberal in giving you free tokens. And when you pay for the service, you have basically unlimited tokens, from my experience, where Claude certainly does limit it, which is disappointing. But I do not use ChatGPT or any generative AI platform 90% of my day. So for me personally, I find Claude to be the most valuable because I use it for code generation. And they are very well known as being current leader from a code perspective. What are your thoughts around Claude?
I think you and I are very aligned. Claude to me is my go-to. I use Claude Code. I use it integrated with my IDE. If I don't need to, for whatever reason, need to have a visual IDE piece of it, I can just use command line and just go 100% Claude Code in a command line and be done with it. And then just run my server or open up the HTML file in a browser, and I get to see the output and give the feedback and interact with. The only complaint I will have is that if you're on the cheap model, which is what I am on, the $20 a month plan, you'll get maybe about 40 minutes at best of hardcore coding and doing whatever. And if you vibe code, you're going to get even less because it will hallucinate because you're so ambiguous. And that's unfortunately the issue with vibe coding. This is coding by people that are not developers. And so if you don't give it explicit instructions, or at least have it create what's called a PRD, you're going to get a lot of hallucinations, a lot of bad stuff are going to happen, and you're going to burn credits and tokens like there's no tomorrow. So the mileage will vary. I always use, I signed up for $100 for the unlimited, well, not the unlimited use, but for, Microsoft's GitHub Copilot. And so I use that as a plan B fallback. Very carefully, I might add. I don't want to pay $100 or $200 a month for Claude, at least not at this time because of the output of what I'm producing. But for me, the go-to is always Claude Code. I even use it for the chat. The only thing I will critique or have a problem with Claude on the desktop, just as a ChatGPT type style thing, not coding, is that it's very brown nosy. it wants to tell you what you want to hear. It always tells you you're right. It's not often good for giving pushback, and that's where I'll say either an open source model or even some of the ChatGPT 4X, even the 5s are probably good at giving it a little bit more pushback and not so brown nosy ish. But if you're trying to do planning and research for getting the feedback of what it tells you, it's really good. If you've not used Perplexity, that's kind of my plan B in a research capacity. So that's kind of where I live in my day-to-day. There are others, and I've not been as innovative as I have been in the past just because my schedule won't permit it. But yeah, I think you and I are totally aligned in Claude. That is my go-to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And I know it's a bit of a tangent, but what are your thoughts about Perplexity? I don't use it as often. Usually I already know where I want to go for my information. I'm a big YouTuber, YouTube certified fixing things. If I need to fix something around the house, I'll just jump to YouTube. I also go through and query, give me step by steps to do this so that I can read it and I can view it. What are your thoughts on Perplexity? 'Cause it's just something that I have not invested time in. Why should someone like me invest time in playing with Perplexity?
Someone like you, someone like me who already has access to Claude probably shouldn't or won't use it. And ever since I've gotten my Claude subscription, I don't use it that much anymore. Before my Claude subscription, I needed a good resource, a good research tool. And so I used it. I actually had a free, so back in, I don't know, a year and a half ago, there was this hardware device called the Rabbit, and it was red, and it was all the rage, and I pre-ordered it, and it took forever to get it, so I canceled it. But for some reason, I wound up getting a free year subscription to Pro on Perplexity as their promotion. Even though I canceled the order, somehow they let me keep the subscription. So wasn't intentional. That wasn't my intention. I really wanted a device, but it took forever to get it. So I canceled it. So that's why I had a year to play with it and use it and appreciate it. And I almost renewed it and paid it. At that time, it was like $200 a year. And I'm thinking, well, I can go to Claude for prepaying $200 a year, or I can go the Perplexity route. And I'm like, there's so much more flexibility. And so as I got into it, I got and used it. And I used the Claude on my mobile phone for the chat version of it and research. And I also have it on my desktop on Windows and Mac. And so I also use it now for the research component. And it does a fantastic job. The only caveat I will say is in your chat, as you're talking, not coding, not Claude Code, because they're two different things, Claude Desktop and Claude Code. Same subscription, just two different UI, UXs, or user interface, user experience. And so within that, you have to say, don't use your built-in knowledge. Make sure you actually think about this and research it. And those thinking and researching keywords is what triggers it to go and act almost identical, in some cases better than Perplexity. So for you and I that have access, I don't ever use it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, again, I know that they are looking at buying Chrome, the Chrome browser, and as a hope to maintain relevance. But I always saw Perplexity as that deep research functionality. And the competing models have kind of pushed them out on that, which brings me really to the next one that I'm a big fan of Gemini. Gemini is my backup. So if I have had a long day of beating up Claude and I'm out of tokens, I thought it's very disappointing with Claude that when you run out of tokens, they don't give you access to the cheaper models to continue playing and asking general questions. So they kind of force you to have a backup. And my backup is Gemini, because I'm a big believer that Google has a lot of resources and an existential incentive to get AI right. Yep. I do believe every query I send to Gemini will be used against me at some point. That's the issue I have with Gemini, and but I find the information they provide is very useful. And usually, I'm not coding with Gemini. I'm doing deep research. I'm not a big Chat GPT, but what I like the other day, I was looking at a legal document for my personal business. And I went and I asked ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Grok, which we'll get to in a second, those four, all to do an analysis of the exact same document. And I read, and it was very educational. I recommend everybody, every once in a while, to try all of them and get a feedback of, okay, this one's better at this and this one's better at that. But Gemini, to me, has been basically all around good, not great at anything.
So I originally played with it and used it, and I quickly stopped using it because I had a pretty decent flow. The problem that I was trying to solve, and this is the reason why I would use it moving forward, and for the reasons I'm about to mention why I won't use it for just general use. I got my first bill from using Gemini 2.5 and I almost fell over. So it's an expensive model to say the least. However, my go-to is if you're doing lots of, for some reason, if you have a lot of data that you're trying to throw in context to have it repeat or push out some information, then I think this is probably worth it. The juice is worth the squeeze because you typically don't chew on this type of use case all that often. But it's that 1 million to 2 million token largest context window. The only thing that's on par with that is the open source Llama 4, which has an even larger context window, but the output is, I don't know, not to my liking and not to my expectation. So context window is only as good as the output, right? And the output's not there in my opinion. So I will continue to use Gemini Pro, but I will use it in a large use case, analytical type of situation that I find myself in. And then I don't mind paying for the tokens because it gives me a really good, solid output. Just going back really quick to make a quick call out about Perplexity. About 8 months ago, maybe possibly coming up on a year, in addition to the Chrome thing you were talking about, they moved into this weird e-commerce alignment. So now when you're using Perplexity, it will come back and it will try to sell you stuff, or it's they're trying to position themselves to be used as the alternate search engine, but they've hooked themselves into some type of backdoor commission scenario. So just be aware that if you use Perplexity, the weights of the effectiveness are now going to be geared towards revenue generation for them as a company. So I don't know, just quick call out for any of those. And then I want to add to something that Sean said, encouraging you to try out all of these models. So there are third-party neutral, there's lots of them. Off the top of my head, I can only remember two. One is going to be Poe. You pay a single subscription, you get access to a whole bunch of models. The other one is Open Router. That one programmatically for me is the better option over Poe. If you're just a user, Poe might be good. If you're going to be a geeky programmer getting into development, Open Router probably your better route because of the API calls or whatever. But it allows you to use your capacity amongst any model and allows you to try all of them. So highly encourage you to check out one of those. Even if you only do 30, 60 days or whatever window, it gives you the ability to be in a playground to where you can do just about anything you want. And you make your own decision based on what you find in your use case, not based on what a consultant's telling you or what you might hear even on our podcast.
Yeah, I mean, the last one I want to talk about in the commercial models is Grok 4. It's not actually listed here, but I can tell you the Grok 4, the Grok app on my phone in voice mode is incredibly awesome with kids. There's a kids mode that you could set up so that it's a much more safer kind of experience. And my kids are very much into STEM type things, stunningly enough. And being able to just talk to it, and like my kids love Alexa. They love Siri. Both of those are very poor experiences right now. They are a decade behind both of those experiences because of the cost, I'm sure. So with Grok, having that conversation, I cannot emphasize it enough. If you have kids, download the Grok app, put it on voice mode, and have a conversation. My kid, my eldest, was going back to school, and he said, "Dad, I'm not looking forward to history." And I'm like, "Okay." We pulled up Grok, and we said, "What's great about history and learning history as a 10-year-old?" And it said, "Hey, this, that, and the other." And I said, "Hey, what YouTube channels should we watch to get interested in U.S. history? And it started recommending, and it's completely real time. It's completely interactive, and the kids absolutely loved it. I don't know about you, but if you're underneath the sink trying to fix a P-trap underneath your sink, and you just want to talk to a plumber real quick, Grok. Hey, Grok, you're a plumber. I'm doing this. Let me do, and you could take pictures and keep going voice mode. Certainly, if you've seen the commercials, Gemini can do some of this too. But my personal experience has been Grok is the fastest than everybody else. It is the most extensive, and it hallucinates the least.
Yep.
But it also is the most eager to please and has the fewest guardrails. So a lot of people think it's fun to tell an AI to be an awful person and show everybody how, because AI is so pleasing, you can make it do a lot of unsavory things.
For me, in context to the screen in the window here, also not listed, I get into these weird tangent use cases. So I highly encourage you. I know it's a geeky playground, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that way for what I'm going to recommend for you. Go to huggingface.com, go into the models, and you can do a search, keyword search, and just for the purposes of seeing if you can get a hit. If you do get a hit, work with your developers or your development team to explore these options and opportunities further. There are so many models up there, but more importantly, based on your business use case, I had spent 12, 13 years in legal, working for the AmLaw 100 firms, including a software development company that created a product that sold into the AmLaw 100 firms. So I've worked with just about all of them at some point in that time frame. And I can tell you, based on large language models, there's about 4-ish that are pretty decent, ready to go, that doesn't take much, if any, guardrailing to go ahead and get some immediate value out of it. Now, is it going to be perfect out of the box? No. Absolutely not. You're going to want to fine tune it, or you're going to want to do something to it like, augmentation of RAG or something to it. But that's one use case. Medical, I don't care whatever you're into, go to Hugging Face and see if you can get a hit. There's so many of these pre-baked models. The key, or what I'm trying to tell you at the bottom line, is use Hugging Face as an accelerator search to find out something very specific and niche to your industry, because it will save you a lot of time. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff out here. These are the close contenders between the open source, closed source, whatever, and just kind of to round out that discussion there. But more importantly, use Hugging Face to go out and find whatever it is that you're looking for. Did you have that graphic?
Yep. Yeah. So I wanted to talk. I know we talked a lot about the commercial, closed source models, but I'd like to share some of my results. Now, if all of you remember, about a month ago, I was talking, about 6 weeks ago, I was talking about RAG, and 4 weeks ago, I was talking about intent models, creating my own small language model. And then one of the things that I'm sure I'll do a follow-up at some point is using large language models with prompts to be intent engines. And so what I did here is I created a test step, and I created a prompt that was rules-based constraints. So I tried the few shot, didn't work very well. And then I started creating a rules-based constraint prompt, which was the best that I've been able to see. And then you could see here's some of the open source models and how successful they were. If you remember, I was around 28% on RAG. I was close to 19% accurate on creating a small language model. And then you could see using open source large language models with a rules-based constraint prompt, the success that I've had here. So let's start with the easiest ones to understand first. So Microsoft has a model called 5.4, and they were 90% accurate. Llama 3 is the meta version of open source models. The Quen is Alibaba. Mistral is the French EU powerhouse AI version. Gemma 3 is Gemini. DeepSeek is a special Chinese group. And then Cogito, which is kind of like a DeepSeek reasoning model, but it's based out of here in the States. So there's quite a bit of options. Now, if you see all these, you could see the number of parameters. Seeing that I have a single GPU, I can only run an 8 billion parameter model here and make it under a second response. And it is incredibly interesting to see this, that there's a lot of these models that just don't follow constraints. You could tell it all day long, do only this from a prompt, and it will ignore you. So when you're prompting and you're not getting, and you're fighting the model, you could very well be spending time on a model that will never work for whatever use case you have. So I said this before, I say it again, and hopefully us talking about these models here will get you to fully understand this fact. You need to be dating your model, not marrying to it. You need to make sure that even though you love a model now, that you have a backup. And you need to make sure that you test whatever application you're depending upon across multiple models so that you have, as you can see here, I am going to use, for my purpose, I'm going to use Cogito and 5.4 completely interchangeably, and I'm going to test on these two models because my prompt works the best on both of those. 90% accuracy in Gen AI is actually pretty good.
Yeah. One thing
you could see like 75% to 90% is what you should expect from an accuracy on any use case. So whatever your use case is, you better have plans for failure.
To give people an extra lever. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and put on my geek hat and swap out of leadership mode and get into more geeky propeller head hat, because we're kind of in the weeds already on this area of it. But going back to the comment I made about Hugging Face and a search. So if you're in leadership, just disregard what I'm about to say. Make sure your developers are on the line for this portion of it. So if you're looking for an extra lever, Sean had made a mention that he can only run the 8 billion parameter. However, in certain use cases, not always, but in certain use cases, you can run a higher billion base parameter if you have a higher quantized version of that, which basically in plain English means it's like the compression, like when you zip up a zip, you put a bunch of files in a zip file, the compression, the reduced amount of file size after it's zipped is essentially what a quantized or quantization is when it comes to these types of models. So sometimes you can run a higher bit or billion base parameter model if it's more compressed. The trade-off is you're not going to get the accuracy. So just give you an extra level, extra lever to pull in the event that you're resource constraint on your hardware.
And again, I cannot emphasize this enough. test. Make sure you have automated testing. In this world, automated testing is just yet another prompt. So keep your sanity. And the big challenge that I'm seeing is, and hopefully this helps, the landscape around models are changing so quickly that, like Cogito, I mean, you didn't know about it beforehand, David. And again, it's just because, when you follow the leaderboard and people make these models available for you to be able to use, and you use them, you can test them on your use case in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I created a script in about 15 minutes to test all these different models. It took me about 10 minutes to download all these models. And it took about 10 minutes to test all these to get this report. Is it worth an hour of your time for 15% bump of accuracy? I mean, absolutely. So, again, that's the kind of thing that I wanted to talk about today. And I appreciate David taking the time. And hopefully we'll continue this conversation on other areas. And we'd love to understand your topics, because we want to get into a much more consultative kind of conversation to understand what are the conversations that we have with people all the time about AI. And hopefully you can get some value as well.
Speaking of value, I just popped up the QR code on the screen. So for those of you interested in seeing the full presentation that we were showing today, we didn't get into all of it because, again, we were just trying to have an organic conversation, and we wanted to give you an asset or a takeaway from today's show. So if you'd be so kind, if you want to go down the rabbit hole a little bit deeper, scan the QR code. You'll get access to today's deck. And in addition to that, we also have a quick link out here for you. And so with that being said, this will take you out to our brand new, or newly, it's not brand new at this point, it's maybe about a month and a half old at this stage, but we do have our newer website out here to where you can join in, listen to all of our podcasts, get to those. More importantly, if you want to get a hold of Sean or I, you just come down here, you can click on our LinkedIn, take you direct to our profile. If you're not already connected, go ahead and try to connect, and we can have a conversation there. Or if you want to hit us both at the same time, click on the contact form. You fill this out. It will go both to Sean and I's inbox, and one or both of us will go ahead and respond to you. So just as a quick reminder, we are here every Wednesday at 12 o'clock noon. And if you're interested in getting any more information, Sean and I work for a very large consulting style company. We have seen just about everything and anything that comes across the plate. There's always room for improvement. There's always room to learn more, and nobody knows everything. But nonetheless, it is a much better starting point than trying to venture out and do this on your own. So go ahead and leverage a consultant that is, somewhere in your neck of the woods, or that's easy to reach out to, because navigating some of this stuff can get really confusing really, really fast. And if I go back to the early days, I can't believe how far I've come. If I had to jump in right now, 2 or 3 years later, I don't know that I would get into it. It's just been that crazy to just try to get from where we were to where we are today. Anything else to add, Sean, before we wrap up?
No. Again, I really appreciate everyone's time and looking forward to the conversation. There's so many different things that need to be updated. I look forward to all the conversations this month.
Sounds great. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.